the newly acting chair for the Department of Psychology. So let's give her a hand. Okay, so I'm just go ahead and hand it off to our presenters at this time. And to be cognizant of the time, we have to dismiss before 1, so probably about close to 1, about 10 minutes till, or at least by 12:45, we need to start the Q&A. Okay, and if you have to slip out, that's understandable. Okay, so I'll hand it off to you, Dr. Lewis. I think you're first.
All right, thank you so much, colleagues. I'm glad to have an educated discussion about this article entitled Navigating the Bumpy Road to Student-Centered Instruction. My colleague, Dr. Patterson, sits next to me, and my colleague, Brian, in Kentucky, will co-facilitate our conceptualization of what the article is discussing. In the beginning, I think the article offers us some sense of installation of hope in an effort to do something that's dynamic and different from our teaching instruction perspective. The first thing that I would talk about is just some of the pitfalls that you typically may go through when starting anything new. And Dr. Patterson is going to kind of operationalize a thought perspective within the article that looks at some of what they call the grief stage. And Brian is going to conceptualize a number of the different perspectives from various professors across the country that have some pessimistic views about it. But I want to start off by kind of giving us some hope. And what the article talks about is that just like anything, when you start something new and trying to start a new perspective from a learning perspective, when you're used to learning from a traditional versus non-traditional perspective. So the article pretty much addressed the fear of going into a different direction, in which the students oftentimes are going to provide some sense of resistance. They may even want to negatively evaluate you, not want to get aboard, but have no fear. You know, the article basically saying that the success is what it is. I kind of transition it, the body of knowledge, kind of like group counseling. Within group counseling, as everybody knows, I'm a mental health counselor, so I teach group counseling. But the whole learner-centered teaching perspective is kind of like group counseling. Individual counseling versus group counseling, you know, both of them benefit, all right? But just like learner-centered teaching, I think if we look at it like the stages of group, in which you have the initial stage, you have your transition stage, your working stage, and then your ending stage. Well, we're going to put it in a perspective like storming, forming, and norming the group. All right, so I'm going to talk about the storming part of it. Dr. Patterson is going to talk about the forming part of it, and Dr. Blaine is going to talk. Dr. Haynes is going to talk about the norming of the model. All right, so within the beginning, like I said, you're going to receive a lot of resistance. It's like anything new, you know, people are going to be resistant. How I normally educated or made the process user-friendly for my students is kind of similar. I just stay persistent with it. You know, I don't have to relinquish the power. I just have to be the one to facilitate accordingly and provide them with ownership of the facilitation of the knowledge. I oftentimes start off saying that, hey, learning is not linear. It's not I teach, you learn. It's reciprocal. We all work together for the common good. And so once they kind of identify that I'm not backing up off for them providing some sense of instruction to the body, to the knowledge domains, they normally are kind of receptive. But I hear the back talk, I hear the sideline conversations, especially when I presented at NAMRAC this summer. And it was kind of like an aha moment with one of my student participants. And she was like, oh, now I understand why you do that. He said, I'm going to tell the other students. And so the article is basically saying, hey, despite all the resistance that you're going to receive, you know, just stay with it. You know, because like I said, they're going to go, it's a transition process to anything. You know, just think about yourself when you've had the different devices, you know, like your cell phone. I know for a long time, I didn't have a problem with my flip phone. I didn't want a smartphone, you know, but hey, as times change and hey, I saw that the trend was going to be what the trend was going to be. And then I thought about this cool idea of being able to talk to my daughter face to face. And so learning center teaching paradigm, it's the same way. You know, we just have to stay persistent with it. And one of the things that it talks about with their fear, you know, don't make it a punitive process in the beginning. It's just a shared learning environment. For me, I give my students position papers. And so I give them a case scenario that they have to take home, work out on their own. Then they are equally divided by numbers to work in the groups. And then they present, they come together, share their feedback on what they've learned from the case study. And then I will come and provide the checks and balances on what they facilitated to their peers. And so now Dr. Patterson will talk about what is similar to the stages of grief. And she'll talk about how the article portrayed that, and which is similar when you're just like anything new. They fear their grave. And so within that, it does pose some degree of grief.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. This was very interesting to see this section in the article because I really hadn't thought of it in terms of learner-centered teaching. And most of us probably know that Kubler-Ross did research in death and dying. I think it was in the 60s and the 70s that she did that research and developed stages of grief. Since that time, her stages have been applied to various areas of psychology. But in this article, they're using it to demonstrate stages that a traditional student might go through in a non-traditional class, and it's called a painful odyssey. And so I'll discuss it in terms of dealing with online classes. So the stages are shock. It's an online class, but you mean I have to go online for the class? Yes, you do. Denial, strong emotion, that's the third stage, and that's typically where well past the beginning of the semester, but I'll lose my sports scholarship if I don't pass this class, but I'm trying to graduate this semester if I don't pass this class. Then the next is resistance and withdrawal, surrender and acceptance, and number 6, struggle and exploration. And particularly with that 6th stage is where I haven't taken responsibility for my own learning in the past because I'm sitting in the classroom and I'm depending on you to tell me everything. I'm not coming to the classroom prepared, but I can easily access you and ask you questions. And typically what you'll hear at this stage is, I'm confused about this assignment. Now, if the person has read the information, which they have to take responsibility to do, or looked at the instructions you've given, they will typically ask a question specifically about the assignment. But when they say, oh, I'm confused, it usually means 9 times out of 10, I haven't read this assignment, and I want you to tell me. I want you to go over it. I don't want to take responsibility for this. And so you resend the information and ask, what specifically, are you asking about, which then forces them to have to read or to listen of whatever it is. Also, another clue can be how they approach you, because there's typically a section within the course shell Mine is called Ask the Professor, and they can go and ask, but they don't want to ask in that because they really haven't read it. So you will see that struggle and exploration. And unfortunately, number 7, return of confidence. Number 8, integration and success. Sometimes it doesn't even happen within that semester.
Okay.
You know, sometimes it takes the next semester that the student accepts that I have to go online, I have to go regularly, I have to plan to do this information. I have 2 students this semester that I'm just really thrilled because they are going great guns. And the semester before, it was, as the article says, a painful odyssey. So it does help, I believe, to understand that it is a process for our students and that we have to assist them in making that transition.
Yeah, as we transition to Dr. Haynes, I think I just want to comment on a few things that Dr. Harris said, is that being persistent, with the different stages, I think to provide transparency, communicate what's going on. Don't allow it to be a total shock with their human development. I think it's ultimately good to put a label to how they may feel about something that's new from a learning perspective, because we get set in our ways, and sometimes we have to make the process user-friendly. And so I like how the article said, hey, in the early stage, don't make it a punitive process. Let's make it a development process so they won't provide as much resistance in the new ideas that we're sharing to them. Okay, Dr. Haynes?
Well, I truly appreciate Dr. Lewis and Dr. Harris, your contributions. This is wonderful discussion here. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share just so that we can have a little bit of a chat here. I've actually done a lot of this. I use this article to frame a lot of my work with development of students. And so just for clarity, tons of times faculty and instructors aren't ready for this. So we need to be cognizant that this is a two-way street. The students are going to go through an emotional reaction and the teachers are going to go through an emotional reaction as well. So if you've tried this, you probably bear with me. We've been trained, conditioned for well over 18 to 20 years through lecture and teacher-centered design. And so if you've been conditioned in that way, then you replicate that. So the first thing, if you ever watch a new teacher, either high school, whatever level, you watch a first teacher, the first time they're challenged with a student, they revert to lecture because that is what they have seen. It is their go-to primal behavior. We got to go to lecture because I can control this. The minute that they start opening up, if they get challenged again, they go right back to primal behavior. Let's control this, which is why a lot of people who try learner-centered teaching are very, they quit. They're not successful. The first time they're challenged, they automatically revert right back to what's comfortable and what has been done before. So how many of you were, for all of your school years, trained in a teacher-centered method? Let's go ahead and start some interaction too, right? I was. And the minute that you try something different, first of all, you're going to be evaluated like you're crazy, right? So first of all, your evaluation matters because you want to shine, you want to look good in front of your evaluators, your administrators. But it doesn't happen that way, because if you look at the learning retention, oftentimes with teacher-centered design, it's very short term. And ask the students. So ask the students, hey, what did you retain from the traditional three exams for one semester? Well, I don't remember jack. But you start to transition the learning and making it meaningful, all of the students are going to start to pay attention. So there's apprenticeship of observation is what it's called from a teacher's perspective as to why we always go and revert to a teacher-centered design. But then you got to look at behaviorist and social conditioning of our students. They've been beat away from creativity and ownership of their own learning since they were in kindergarten. I have a daughter who's in kindergarten. I have daughters all the way up into going into high school soon. And in elementary school, they run to get on the bus, and by middle school, they're running to get home. What is that phenomenon? Now, phenomenon is we beat the creativity out of them. We don't talk about knowledge transition between subjects. And learner-centered design flips that on its head. And this is the emotional response of both instructor and teacher as we move along that continuum. So what are the results, right? First of all, the teachers got to know they're in for it, right? This is a total transition of the way that these students have been trained for a long time, and they get out of your class and they go back to a teacher-centered design that they're more comfortable with. Second of all, 9 times out of 10, it's your AP students that are going to flip out first. Because what's the rubric? You're not telling me what to do, and you're not telling me how to be successful, because now you're telling me that I need to design my own success, and I'm not comfortable with that. So a lot of times what we also think is that our traditional good students under a teacher-centered design are also going to be the good. They're the biggest pain in the neck sometimes, because it really flips them on their head from what they've been conditioned to and their motivation for getting good grades. Can anybody line, raise up hands? When you start to switch to this, the type of good student shifts. Those who have struggled to learn all of a sudden start to rise, and those who learning comes naturally under the teacher-centered design start to struggle. And so you're going to see a lot of kickback in that capacity. And so that's something that as an instructor you need to be aware of. So I'm just going to read one quote and then I'm going to finish about how this can be a success. I'll give you a little case study and I'll give you a quick quote. But it says, last semester I took my course and it's the best decision I ever made. Now remember, I feel like this is anonymous, but I'm feeling like this is from one of those type A type students. He forced us to get out of our comfort zones and work with people we wouldn't usually work with. I've never been so stressed out and nervous in class before. He promised us at the beginning of the semester, this is the beautiful point, that we would love and hate the class at the same time, and he was right. During the whole semester, I was questioning why the hell I was in this class and why I decided to take his class. After it was all over, I saw the big picture. I feel more equipped to handle uncomfortable situations, and that was a skill that I needed to learn the hard way. If I hadn't taken that class, I would never feel somewhat comfortable in front of other people, giving my opinions or instructions. It made me realize that I can take control of my life and put a stamp on it. So I utilized that as a review of one of our courses that was learner-centered to show you that student was not comfortable probably 3/4 of the way. And even if it's that last 10%, I don't care if it's during graduation when they start getting jobs that they go, aha, that's kind of the purpose of students taking ownership of their own. And I've gone so far to have students produce their own class and pass it through the dean in order to do this, and have published on that. But I just want you to think it's a tough job. But once you get there, the rewards from your students and from the faculty are phenomenal, and you're not going to get it right the first time. So it's okay to struggle in this capacity. But I just wanted to bring that to the fore because it's brutal, and you're going to want to go back to your traditional teacher-centered design. But you got to just have faith in the process. So I think we're open for questions. I know that we've been cruising through this.
Well, one thing that I wanted to, in response to the question you asked about how many of us were exposed to teacher-centered as opposed to learner-centered, and I noticed that Kelly Henderson said that she's been exposed to both, and I've been exposed to both. So it makes me think of it in terms of content of programs, because my master's is in library and information studies, and that content forces you to have to do a more learner-centered program, and ours was, and you can get into the point of where you take it for granted that everyone is doing it this way, and they aren't. But there are those that might have comments on being exposed to teacher-centered as opposed to learner-centered classroom.
But I think someone has a discussion question in the chat. Brian, can you see that?
Yeah, so Susan says, can you give some examples of how to develop a student-centered classroom? I'm aware of the flip model. Okay, so you want to give examples of a student-centered classroom?
Well, one of the examples in the article that's given is, and she's also asking the name of the article. And Dr. Matthew is new to our team, so she wasn't last year when we first brought this up. But the name of the article is Navigating the Bumpy Road to Student-Centered Instruction. And one of the things that is discussed is cooperative learning, and where students have to develop some of the parameters for the project that they are working on and have to work in groups. And students that can really be resistant to this can be the type of student that Dr. Haynes was referencing, the A-type student that is a high achiever, likes working alone, and likes having very specific instructions for their work. And of course, the other complaint can be if you have a member that's not pulling their weight. And so what you do in those situations is you design an evaluation that will be embedded in that project to assess if a member has not really done their part of the work. So you need to have that as part of your design when you're working with those cooperative groups. But that's one in which you can have some pushback from a student, particularly those who don't like to work in groups.
Can I ask a question?
We have a question. Hello, we have a question on the Tulsa, on the Langston University, Langston campus. Mr. Cassidy.
My question is, can you provide us some concrete examples of maybe tasks, assignments, classroom activities that faculty can use to encourage a student-centered instruction? Because, I hear us talking about it, and I know the article goes into detail, but I guess for those of us who have not gone through the article in its entirety, can some examples be provided?
For the next.
I think I talked about in the beginning how I use a case scenario. Like I teach legal and ethical issues in counseling. All right, so before even giving them a structured presentation about any given topic, I just give them a blanket case scenario that has multiple ethical dilemmas in it. All right, so the task is given to the students blindly. Tell them, hey, you have to figure out what the ethical issues are in this case scenario. Then I'll assign them into a group and I give them time to collaborate their ideas. Like I may take the first 20 minutes of class, and then after they've responded to that case scenario on their own, then they meet with their group. Like I might go 1, 2, 3. All the ones meet, all the twos meet, all the threes meet. So they don't have control over who they're going to meet with. But the task is for them to facilitate what they have learned together in their shared experience. And I will kind of referee the whole dissemination of the knowledge. If it's something that's out of bounds, I'm going to call foul, and I may go ahead and it's not a punitive thing, but just a learning thing to kind of reconnect them to the ideas and the direction that I know that they need to connect to as it relates to that particular knowledge domain. Is that a good example for you?
Yes. Yes, but I guess how does that differ from teacher-focused instruction? How would that same example, could you present the scenario to me if it was a teacher-focused instruction, just so I could see how the students are forefronted?
All right, from a teacher perspective, I would just come in. I know all the answers to to the case scenario. I know what all the ethical issues are, and I know how the plausible resolution on resolving those issues. From a traditional perspective, I would come in with the linear perspective. I teach, you get it. I put it out there. Did you get it? Yes or no? With a learning center teacher perspective, is that the students get it first, and then they share their ideas on how they got it, well, what they got, and how they got. Because if you notice, everyone learns differently. One of the first things I do is I try to tap into everybody's learning style. I give a learning style inventory so they can put a label to how they learn. So just because I teach a certain way, it may be more beneficial for them to have, some other hands-on experiences. And so I think learning center teaching is kind of more hands-on, because when I just noticed when I graduated in 2004 with my doctorate, I was very excited about being a professor. And I was very prepared every class. But what I soon noticed is that I need to change, because the students wasn't getting it. And they were being lazy, knowing that I was coming every week and was going to provide this process of regurgitation to them and just teach them everything. But when I started making them accountable for some of the chapter presentations, yes, I'm going to give them the basic stuff that I know, in which I will model. I will model how to facilitate the knowledge. Okay, and then I'm going to hold them accountable for chapter presentations or whatever knowledge domain I want for them to do. Because if they don't learn anything else, they're going to learn their topic. There can't be a knot on the log for the whole semester. So everybody is equally accountable for the shared learning environment that I create. I'm just a coach. Everybody is a part of the team. We all want to score here, because like I tell my students, let me worry about your grade. You worry about your competency.
It makes sense to me. It sounds like you're saying to engage students in the classroom in discussions where they're able to come to their own concepts of learning, as opposed to us telling them what the texts are about or what they should be getting, right? Basically allowing them to come to those discoveries on their own terms. Is that what you're saying?
That's a good analysis. Yes, very much.
That works.
I would add that it happens day one. You walk into the classroom and you don't have in your syllabus a list of appropriate behaviors or demands or whatever. The students set the tone for that. So they need to know what holds each other accountable. And they set the classroom environment on day one on what is appropriate, what is not. I tell my students, you pay for this time. Is it okay for others to come in late and interrupt the process that we're going through? No, that's not okay. Well, do we agree with that? And so you set the tone day one with your students. Then you also articulate, hey, where's their base knowledge? Because not all the students are coming in with the same base knowledge to your particular class. So you assist in evaluating that base knowledge. You go through the objectives of the class, and a lot of times they'll even help you enhance the assignments that you have laid out, because they want to walk through a different way, a different methodology. If you're flexible enough, the students are even harder than you would be in your own syllabus. They're more difficult on each other. They hold each other to a level of accountability that you as a single instructor cannot. So just in setting the classroom environment tone for the semester on day one can lead to a learner-centered process. Plus it builds rapport with the students by saying, you know what, I may be the expert in the knowledge base, but we are a group in the facilitation. And just because I have content knowledge doesn't mean I understand you as an individual or how we work. So you have to be adaptable. And even in the syllabus, because now they're becoming contractual in a lot of nature, what I would recommend is putting a little asterisk out there. And mine says that the class and the syllabus change to meet the individual needs of each semester's set of students, which allows me to have flexibility and work the assignments to meet the students' needs and where they're at.
Okay, we got a question on Langston University, Langston campus here. Dr. Tilha, speak loud so you can speak real loud.
So I'm sure that most of the instructors have tried these different methods sometime during their career as professors. Some part of what was published in this paper. But I'm asking, is there a trend that's observed in that some students that do well in any situation, if you switch it up, whether it's teacher or student-centered instruction, they do well anyway? and other students just don't get it. It seems like because they don't, if they're not gonna perform well in the student or the teacher-centered instruction, they're just not gonna optimize or succeed in terms of their grades, whereas some students always do. It doesn't matter whether it's instruction based on with students or the instructor.
Okay. Hey, I forgot the name, sir, but great analysis in which you have to know your product. Right? And so I know that I try to take a proactive effort to try to meet my students where they stand. I do not believe that there's not one student that comes to college that don't want to learn. How we reach them and how we connect to them and allow for the knowledge to be beneficial for their human growth, development, and transition into their professional identity, that's important. And sometimes they may need a little coaching on the side. They may need a little advocacy. They may need a little cheerleading. But I just refuse to believe that there's any student that don't want to learn. Do we have some lazy students here and there? There's some students that I have some significant concern with? You bet. You bet. All right, but when I have the opportunity to provide academic advisement with them to figure out what it is that I can do better from a facilitator perspective, because I'm trying to bridge the gaps of misunderstanding. Because when one of them fail, I fail too. I've received comments from field coordinators that say I won't hire a Langston student, all right, because maybe one student fell through the cracks and maybe did not apply themselves as we expect for them to as caregivers, should I say. And so that's gonna happen. But what you do is give them every opportunity to succeed. All I'm saying is taking ownership as a professor, you don't have to be the end all be all to their development. Sometimes I see the light bulb go off among each other. I'm just as satisfied whether they receive that knowledge from me or whether they receive that knowledge from each other. Because my ultimate goal is that they leave here better than they came. They leave here more knowledgeable and more proficient in their different perspective than they came. If they receive something out of this course. Yes, I know my students give me the label of being tough, but I guarantee you, when they have to take the comprehensive exams, I bet you they know ethics. Because I make ethics user-friendly for them, I challenge them, and I support them.
Okay, Dr. LeBlanc and Dr. Esters, would you like to chime in? And Weejay, did we answer your question?
Well, I did have an example that I wanted to give that's a very basic example, something very small that can make a difference, because you can incorporate different methods to different levels and different percentages. But in the children's literature and young adult literature classes that I teach, they have to read, analyze, and evaluate books. And I used to give them a model of what that evaluation should look like. And it was an example, it was a sample. I stopped doing that because the majority of the students, not thinking at all, I'm just going to use her model and I'm going to go exactly like that. So I don't give it anymore. I give you the information that should be in the evaluation, but how you write it is up to you. And just that little small change, you'll have students go, what? Oh my God, you don't have anything that I can look at and see what this is supposed to look like? It's supposed to have these elements. It's up to you how it looks. And that's just something very small, but requires students to think more critically than just following rote learning. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. Jane, Dr. LeBlanc, Dr. Esters.
Yes.
Yes, good afternoon. We're here enjoying the conversation, also trying to provide some comments in group chat. One of the questions was give concrete specific examples about learner-centered teaching. There is a series of modules that you can listen to or watch, and they'll walk you through the learner-centered teaching model. What I've learned in this bumpy road process from my experiences is that you need to start where the students are at. If they're used to lecturing, then go a little bit with being learner-centered rather than going extreme. And so that could start with a think, pair, share conversation in the classroom. You present an idea, you ask them to think about the question, and then they can pair up with a neighbor, and then they can report out to the class. So once you get the cooperative learning in place or active learning, then you can give them a more complex problem to solve. Again, you can continue to build on the active learning, having them work together on those experiences. And then you can even make it more complex by having them go do some assignments or experiences out in the real world. So that's what I mean by developmental and providing some scaffolding. And so that's an example of how to not only some of the concrete examples you're looking for, but also how to do it in a way that's more systematic. Don't just do the sticker shock. I'm going to be LCT, and you dump them into a complex, ill-structured problem and have them go to some real-world experience where it's very unsettling. So that's where I would like to at least make a comment. The other question I raised on the discussion board is here at Purdue, we now have a center, a place on campus that is called the Active Learning Center. And so these classrooms are structured in such a way that you can be more active learning or have more active learning in the classroom. I'm just thinking about, will we see fewer bumpy roads if the culture of how we teach change institutionally?
Okay, so before we go on, we have to dismiss. This is rich conversation, but you're going to get mad at me, but I have to end it right now. Okay, but before we leave, I want to give our students an opportunity. We have some students on the Langston University Langston campus. Can someone briefly tell me from the student perspective, how do you like student-centered learning? Do you think it's important? Do you wish that your professors would be more learner-centered or like cooperative learning, active learning, demonstration learning? Or do you think that would hinder the process, your teaching and learning process? Okay, go ahead, speak loud. Now, these are students telling us faculty what they would like to see more of. Not being critical now, so be very gingerly about the way you're saying it. Okay. Oh, you see Dr. LeBlanc is saying, gimme.
Well, my name is George Schumann, and
speak loud so they can.
I see that you guys have the teacher-centered versus the student-centered. And I feel like, honestly, that really goes back to the subject, because sometimes the subject could determine whether you can either get the teacher-centered, where they give you the words and, you learn them, you come back, you do a definition, true, false, you win. Well, then there's the student-centered, where maybe the subject is a little bit more hard. It's a little bit harsh, maybe like accounting, abstract. So maybe there may be different ways, like hands-on, to better submit, the information from teacher to student or student to teacher. And that's honestly how I feel about the subject.
But that's an excellent comment.
Can I comment back about that just quickly?
Okay, let me give another student an opportunity to say something right quick. We have one over here.
I was going to say that
speak loud.
I agree with my classmate about, to me, it seems like certain subjects lend themselves better to student-centered versus teacher-centered. And I think that I feel like pretty much any area of life, like just having one or another of something is not ideal. And so it seems like, to me, the operative thing would be to have a little bit of both. Like after the teacher has had kind of more of a teacher-centered instruction period, then give the students some fun or whatnot that is that they would come up with their, in their learning.
Do we have any other pressing from students? Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Okay, Brian, go ahead and close us out. You can go ahead.
This is wonderful discussion, and I love the comments.
Go ahead if you have to. If you have to leave, go ahead.
How do you, in your day-to-day social lives, learn vocabulary? Your mom and dad never gave you a rote sheet with definitions on vocabulary so that you could utilize it. It happens socially. How do you figure out if I say something? A lot of times you have the world technology right at your fingertips and you Google that stuff. That's just learner-centered instruction. It's individual instruction, right? You're teaching yourself how to navigate this stuff. I worked in College of Ag and have for my entire career. And the first thing a scientist will tell me, they must have the base knowledge before we can go learner-centered. I hope that provides a platform because I think Dr. Knobloch and I would challenge that theory and have through a lot of research and grants to do so. We would love to flip that discussion and add that to our next level of discussion, if you would like, about does one need a primary base knowledge to move into a learner-centered process? We would argue no, and we would love to open that discussion. Does one need to know vocabulary before they move into a learner-centered instruction and have that base knowledge? We would argue no. And so I would love to continue this discussion, and hopefully that's a cliffhanger for the next topics. And with our colleagues here today, we can rock and roll for the next round.
I agree.
Somebody said, what did y'all say? Someone said, you agree?
I agree.
Okay. Who said that? The students have to continue this. We really need to talk more about this. So it looks like this is going to be, I wanted to cover another subject in the month of October, but looks like it's going to be a part 2 to this, okay? So Brian, can you pull up the last slide for us, which talks about some of the other topics? And if you have to slip out, thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming, and we'll keep you posted on all of the other information. Brian, on the last slide, it talks about the topics. Can you pull up that slide?
Yeah, let me figure it out. There we go. There we go. Can you see it? Dr. O, can you see it?
We can. So we have challenges of student-centered online learning, alternative or alternate forms of student-centered teaching assessment, teacher-student relationship through student-centered instruction. So majority of the group wants to continue with this with part 2, but we can also incorporate the teacher-student relationship through student-centered instruction, since we're going to continue this with part 2. Does everyone agree?
What is number 3? What is number 3?
Look at it later.
WeJ compiled the list. So as I remember, someone wanted to know, how do we nurture that relationship between the teacher-student relationship through the learner-centered instruction to make students feel comfortable with the process? So I think that goes kind of hand in hand with the part 2 of continuation of the conversation. So we should just do number 3, I think. Okay, and we need to decide on a number 3. We need to decide on a date in October that's pretty good. A Wednesday is fine, but what Wednesday? We have our professional development coordinator here, Dr. Brown. Come forward, Dr. Brown. She's going to thank everybody for coming too.
Hi, thank you for the facilitators and the presenters. Thank you so much for giving us this informative presentation. To the attendees, we will be sending out evaluation forms. If you could just give us some evaluations and some comments, we would greatly appreciate that. I look forward to the next session.
Okay. And then we have evaluation forms with our grant, but she also has evaluation forms here at, in faculty development that she needs to take care of. So we're looking at a Wednesday in October. Can we decide on a date, or do we need to do a doodle poll?
We do October 24th.
We can't do the 24th.
24th and 23rd.
We can't do 24th and 23rd.
You say you can't?
Cannot. It needs to be a Wednesday, but we're not sure what Wednesday. Can someone give me a date? Anyone?
31st then. That's the only day I'm available.
31st?
31st, oh, that's Halloween.
Can we do 31st?
Unless you allow us to wear costumes, because some of us will be in production that day.
Yeah, the week of 15 is our homecoming. That's probably not good.
Yeah, it won't be.
So can we do it the 31st?
31st works for me.
It's scary, so we can do it in Halloween.
Okay, the 31st, Halloween. Sounds good. Is that okay, partners?
I expect to see costumes,
Yeah,
all right?
That's close to our national
Student
conference.
engagement.
I know. Oh, no.
Interested by this
Yeah,
costume.
that's,
We probably need to change that because that's close to the Learner Center teaching.
yeah, the national
The
conference.
conference is the next day.
Can we do it the middle of October? Is that date taken?
That's fine. That Wednesday's the 17th, right?
Yeah, but that's our homecoming week.
I will be at the University of Kansas. Well, I don't have to be here. I can still come through faculty development.
But can we do the
Yes,
17th?
17th works.
But you can log on wherever you are.
Yes, I can.
Can we do it the 17th?
That's fine.
Is that the Wednesday of homecoming
Yeah.
week?
Yes.
I'll be doing high school day that day, but that's fine.
That's fine. The 17th is fine.
Okay, the 17th. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, facilitators. Awesome job.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.